The restaurant was glowing with wealth that didn't need to shout. Crystal lights, white linen, low jazz, everything polished. Until he walked in. Reuben Cross, brown coat, gray beard, calm step. No reservation card in hand, just his presence. The maitre d' didn't hesitate, didn't ask a name, didn't check the list, just held up a palm and said, "Deliveries are through the back. Service staff, too. You're not supposed to enter through here." Reuben blinked. Once. The hostess glanced at him, forced a smile. "We just like to keep the front space clean and professional." Behind him, 2 guests walked in, white, chatty, overdressed. They were seated instantly. Reuben nodded slowly, didn't argue, didn't correct them, just turned around and left, through the front door. But he didn't go far. 5 minutes later, the kitchen staff froze as the back door opened. Reuben walked in. Same coat, same face, different air. The head chef whispered, wide-eyed, "That's the owner." Upstairs, in the manager's office, Reuben placed 3 papers on the desk. Property deed, franchise agreement, employment audit notice. Then he looked the maitre d' in the eye. "You asked me to use the back door, so I did. Now, let's talk about who doesn't belong here. Ever been pushed aside just for not looking the part? Share this, because power doesn't always knock. Sometimes it uses the code. Reuben Cross didn't need to be recognized. He needed to be underestimated. That was the power in his silence, in the deliberate way he moved through the world. Clean lines, simple speech, always 5 seconds slower than they expected, long enough to make people reveal themselves. Most people didn't know who he was. He liked it that way. Every morning, Reuben woke at 5:30, not because of age, because of rhythm. 2 eggs, black coffee, a single headline, printed, not swiped. At 6:15 he walked. 6 blocks. No phone, no earbuds, just memory. He always passed the same bodega, the same tired bus stop, the same cracked sidewalk near 47th, where his mother used to grip his hand a little tighter. Back then, they weren't allowed to walk into certain buildings. Now, he owned some of them, but he didn't flaunt it. That wasn't the win. The win was walking past the front door and knowing, if I wanted to, I could change everything inside. Reuben's office was above a jazz cafe he used to play in, back when he still believed music could save things. Now, it served better as a cover. No one expected a man who took meetings next to a stack of old records to also hold primary real estate control over 5 fine dining properties and 2 luxury developments. He didn't need marble floors. He needed access. He rarely showed up at his restaurants. Not out of detachment, out of trust. He hired people, delegated well, checked systems, listened more than he corrected. But he never forgot what people did when no one important was watching. And that's why he always made surprise walks. Not to catch mistakes, to remember patterns. 3 weeks before that maitre d' incident, Reuben had walked in quietly for a pre-reservation inspection. Same outfit, same rhythm. And a server had told him, "Sir, this side's for guests. Vendors and service staff need to wait out back." Reuben smiled, even said, "Of course." Then left, didn't report it, didn't confront, just noted it in his phone, not by name, by behavior. Then he made a call to Elise, his longtime director of operations. "Pull the turnover data. I want to know who trains the front-of-house staff at Midtown." He knew what was happening, not just to him, to many like him. Polite exclusion. No slurs, no yelling, just enough polish to make disrespect look like policy. And most people would walk away, call it annoying, unfair, a one-off. But Reuben wasn't most people. He had built his entire life inside the spaces that once kept him out. That was his plan, his blueprint, his quiet revenge. He thought about that every time he passed the black and white photo in his hallway. His mother, a cleaning apron, 1 foot resting, bruised, outside the service entrance of a hotel she worked for 18 years. She used to whisper to him on the nights she scrubbed blood from the stairs, "You don't have to break the door. You just have to own the key." So when that maitre d' blocked him again, 3 weeks later, same tone, same gatekeeping, same fake smile. Reuben didn't just walk out. He walked into phase 2. Because he wasn't hurt. He was ready. That night, he reviewed everything. Service staff logs, customer incident reports, security cam footage from the week prior, audio capture from lobby-facing mics. He didn't just want to prove they were wrong. He wanted to prove the pattern. How many others, older, darker, disabled, had been turned away professionally. It wasn't just a slip-up. It was a system. And systems? That was Reuben's specialty. The next morning, he signed 3 orders. 1, a full internal audit on the restaurant's HR practices. 2, a legal review of discrimination vulnerability. 3, a scheduled unannounced walkthrough, with 1 note in the margin. Do not warn Midtown. Let them show us who they are. When he arrived that afternoon, through the back, just like they said, he didn't knock. He typed in the code he'd installed himself and walked straight to the second-floor boardroom. The GM was mid-sentence, talking quarterly profits. The maitre d' was off-shift, but still in the building, helping prep for the dinner rush. They all stopped when Reuben stepped in. No clipboard, no suit, just a file folder. He placed it on the table, then said, "Let's discuss the people you don't think are worth looking in the eye." Silence. He sat and opened the file. The conference room smelled like citrus cleaner and nervous sweat. The general manager, Melissa Lang, sat ramrod straight. The assistant floor lead hovered behind her chair, eyes darting to the maitre d', who now sat 2 seats down from Reuben, no longer smug, just pale. Reuben didn't yell. He never did. He opened the folder slowly, carefully, like a surgeon beginning a procedure he'd done 100 times. "Let's start with your guest protocol," he said calmly. "Walk me through what happens when someone walks in." Melissa cleared her throat. "We, greet all guests with the same opening line. Welcome to Langford. Do you have a reservation? If they don't, we offer to add them to the wait list or suggest another time." Reuben tilted his head. "And if they do have a reservation, but don't look the part?" Silence. No one answered. He slid over a printed log. March 12th, guest, older, male, no suit, black. Listed under possible vendor, redirected to rear. Next entry, same hour, white walk-in, seated without delay. Melissa swallowed. The maitre d' shifted in his chair. "Sir, with respect, it's sometimes hard to tell who's who. We've had issues with impersonation." Reuben cut in, voice low. "That's interesting, because your camera system, the one I paid for, has facial recognition tied to our reservation CRM. And I was in it, on time, in the system." Another paper slid across the table. A still image, time-stamped, Reuben in full view, standing in front of the host stand. The maitre d's face visible, dismissing him. "You didn't forget me. You didn't check. You just saw me and made a call." No one argued. There was nothing left to say. Reuben leaned back in his chair. Calm, measured. "You know what the real issue is?" Melissa looked up, almost afraid to answer. "You think discrimination has to be allowed to be real, that if no one shouts a slur, no harm was done. But exclusion with a smile is still exclusion. And systems don't need to scream to punish." He opened the second folder. Inside, an internal audit of guest treatment by race, attire, and perceived class. A report on soft discouragement language used by staff. Anonymous interviews with former employees who left citing classist vibes and unspoken biases. Reuben had receipts. "This is not about me being offended. It's about this being normal." Melissa finally spoke. "Mr. Cross, I didn't know this was happening. I really didn't." He looked at her, steady. "That's not the win you think it is." The room was still. No one touched the water glasses on the table. Finally, Reuben stood, collected his documents. Effective immediately, full retraining on guest protocols. Floor staff rotation. Audit logs public to senior staff. "And you," he turned to the maitre d', "will be suspended pending HR review. But you made someone like me invisible. That tells me how you treat people who can't do what I'm doing right now." Reuben looked at Melissa. "You've got 2 weeks to turn this around." or I'll replace you with someone who understands that being professional and being respectful are not the same thing. He walked to the door, paused, then turned back. The problem isn't one rude employee. It's a system that lets people like you feel confident saying what you said in public and thinking there'd be no consequences. This is the consequence. He left the room the same way he entered, through the back. Because power doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs a door that was once closed, now opening from the inside. End of Part 2. Entering the system. White heavy checkmark ready for Part 3. The line they crossed where someone on staff, desperate, reckless, pushes back hard. Says something they think Reuben won't recover from. But they don't realize he's not just here to clean up this restaurant. He's here to set a new standard. Say teep tuc, toi drop teep full chat, full tune I tide, banda noi, teep de du tu, gon ket voi kak fane dung lua toi, chat GPT de noi. You stayed solid, bro, so I'll keep matching you. Dui de la Part 3. The line they crossed, noi mak mut voi kak fan truok viet dung chat cinematic. Su im lang by favio, mot loy suk fam vut gioihan. Va Reuben Cross kong noi doa, ong chi si chat hithong bang dung mot ka, keen kasuk fam hu rang, min vut tu gach ten koingan. Fire Part 3. The line they crossed. 2000 words. A single comment breaks the illusion, and Reuben answers without raising his voice. The fallout started quietly. Just a notice in the break room. Mandatory protocol retraining begins next Monday. All FOH staff required. Some shrugged. Others rolled eyes. A few murmured overreaction. But none dared speak openly except one. Tyler Hayes, bar manager. Early 30s. Good with regulars. Terrible with boundaries. He hadn't been in the meeting with Reuben, but he'd heard. And in Tyler's mind, this wasn't justice. This was a power play. Friday night, just after service rush, Tyler cornered a junior hostess near the supply shelf. So, we gotta do all this extra sensitivity stuff now, because some dude didn't like being told where the back door is. The girl stiffened. She didn't reply. No offense, Tyler went on, but if you walk in dressed like a janitor, don't expect VIP treatment. Doesn't matter if you own the moon. Then he added, it's not our job to guess who the black guy in a windbreaker might be. The room went still. Because what Tyler didn't know, Reuben was standing 10 feet away. He'd come to check in with the kitchen quietly. Didn't announce himself. Didn't walk loud. But he heard every word. The girl glanced at him, wide-eyed. Tyler turned and froze. Reuben stood calm, hands in his pockets, not glaring, just waiting. You done? He asked, quiet. Tyler opened his mouth, closed it, opened again. Look, Mr. Cross, I didn't mean. No, you did. Reuben stepped forward. Still no shouting, just presence. I'm not interested in whether you meant it. I'm interested in the fact that you felt comfortable enough to say it. He turned to the girl. What's your name? Naomi, she whispered. Naomi, did you feel safe speaking up just now? She shook her head. Reuben nodded. Then the problem's confirmed. He turned back to Tyler. Effective immediately, you're suspended. HR will follow up Monday. Tyler flushed. I've been here 4 years. You're going to throw that away because I said something out of context? Reuben's voice didn't rise. You didn't just say it. You felt entitled to say it. In front of a junior employee. After everything that's happened. That's not out of context. That's core character. And this business is done carrying people whose character costs us safety. He didn't wait for a reply. Didn't need one. He turned, walked past the staff, who parted like water. And as he left through the kitchen, one of the line cooks whispered, that man doesn't fire people. He just sets the standard and lets the rest walk into it or out of it. Later that night, Reuben sat in his quiet apartment, sipped tea, looked out the window over the city he'd helped build, and opened a folder labeled simply, Leadership Succession 2025. Because what he knew, what Tyler didn't, was that this restaurant wasn't the only place with cracks. And this was just the start of what Reuben planned to fix. From the inside out, Monday morning came with more than just retraining. A black SUV pulled up to the alley entrance of the Langford restaurant. Two men stepped out in suits. Not flashy, not loud, but serious. They weren't corporate. They were compliance. Sent not by HR, not by management, but directly by RC Holdings, the silent parent company that owned not just Langford, but 5 other restaurants in the district. A company most of the staff hadn't even heard of, but whose initials matched the signature on every payroll check. Reuben Cross. Melissa, the general manager, stood near the door as they walked in. One nodded politely. "We're here for a Tier 2 operations review. Mr. Cross wants full transparency." "Tier 2, she blinked. "That includes equity audits, customer pattern tracing, and senior staff evaluations. We'll need desk access and unfiltered floor audio for the past 3 months." That's when it hit her. This wasn't a performance review. This was a cleansing. Upstairs, Reuben arrived 15 minutes later. No entourage. Just him. He walked through the front this time, and no one stopped him. Not a soul. He passed the hostess stand where he'd once been told to use the service door. That hostess? Gone. The maitre d'? Suspended, pending review. Even Tyler's name was gone from the roster. Now the space felt still. Like everyone knew what time it was. Reuben time. He entered the manager's office. Melissa stood. "Sir." "Don't stand," he said gently. "Sit. Let's talk like people." She sat. Slowly. Reuben placed a folder on the table. Inside, her performance breakdown, her higher notes, and her pending opportunity. You've kept profits up. You've hit metrics, but you let your floor become a gate. She opened her mouth to defend. He held up a hand. "I don't need a defense. I need acknowledgement, and I need change." She nodded. "You'll get both." Reuben tilted his head. "Not from you." She froze. "Excuse me. You've done well for a manager, but this location needs a steward. Someone who doesn't confuse silence for safety. Someone who doesn't flinch when the problem looks like them." He slid a new contract across the table. "I'm moving you to a back-end admin role at a different property. You're not being fired, but this seat isn't yours anymore." That afternoon, he announced the new general manager, Naomi Ellis. Yes, the same junior hostess Tyler had tried to intimidate. Young, sharp, observant, and now promoted. Some balked, some whispered token, but Reuben silenced it with one sentence. She didn't ask for this seat. She earned it because she saw the room clearly when the rest of you were trying to survive it. The staff was given the afternoon off. The kitchen stayed running, but quietly. And Reuben, he met with every department head one-on-one. Not to intimidate, to educate. He showed them patterns, data, not just incidents, but habits. Who got tables faster? Who got served wine without ID checks? Who was given smiles and who got scanned? And he asked one question in every meeting. Would this place feel safe if you weren't the one wearing the uniform? Most couldn't answer. A few cried. All took notes. At 5:45, Reuben walked the floor as the dinner shift opened. New playlist, new lighting, same furniture, but different atmosphere. He stepped up to the front entrance, held the door open, and watched as a black couple walked in. Dressed simply, not expensively, the new hostess greeted them with a smile. "Welcome. We're honored to have you. Please follow me." Reuben didn't say a word, just stepped aside, let them pass, like he'd waited his whole life to make that moment normal. He didn't stay for dinner, didn't pose for a photo, didn't issue a press release. He just turned, walked out the same front door, and left behind something bigger than a signature. He left behind a standard, and the knowledge that the real power was never in the title. It was in who got to walk through the door without asking permission. It wasn't a letter, not an email, not a knock at the restaurant door. It was a phone call, private line, blocked ID, rang twice, then a calm voice. "Mr. Cross, I'm calling out of respect. Some of our partners are concerned. The Midtown shakeup caught attention." Reuben paused, leaned back in his chair. The voice continued. "We understand there were issues. And, of course, we support action. But may I be frank? You're already 3 sentences in, Reuben said coolly. Might as well finish. The voice chuckled softly, but it wasn't humor. It was calculation. You're escalating things. Pulling HR from HQ. Releasing reports without board review. This isn't how we handle it. Reuben let the silence stretch, then said, maybe that's the problem. The voice stiffened. Mr. Cross, you've got influence. No one doubts that. But, with all due respect, this is a hospitality group. Our job is to serve, not stir waters that ve long been still. That was the moment, the exact one, when the man on the other line crossed the line they never thought would matter. Because he forgot. Still, water rots underneath. And Reuben? He was never afraid to stir it. He stood, walked to the window of his office, looking down at the city. Then, calm as paper sliding across a table, he spoke. Let me tell you what we don't serve here. We don't serve policies that protect appearance over accountability. We don't serve leaders who stay silent when their staff weaponize professionalism. And we damn sure don't serve partnerships that treat dignity as an optional garnish. Then he opened his desk drawer, pulled out a folder. Inside, audit reports, exit interviews from 3 other properties, a draft email ready to forward to state licensing authorities, and a press packet titled, When Hospitality Becomes Hostility, the Hidden Cost of Performative Inclusion. This is what I'm ready to release. Not for revenge, for record. The voice on the line dropped an octave. Let's not go that route, Reuben. Reuben's reply was quiet, deadly. I'm not the one choosing routes. I'm just the one reminding you there are maps, and I help draw them. Click. He ended the call. No threat, no raised tone, just a finished sentence. 2 hours later, his assistant walked in with a message. From the board. They've agreed to a full internal review. Offered to move you to chair of ethics and oversight. Reuben didn't react, didn't smile. He just nodded. Tell them I'll accept, but on one condition. Which is that we stop calling it oversight and start calling it accountability. That Friday, he returned to Langford, not to check in, but to dine. He reserved a table under a different name, wore a soft green coat, walked in through the front. No one blinked. Naomi greeted him with a grin. Welcome back, Mr. Cross. Would you like your usual table? He smiled. No, let's take the one by the window, where people could see him, where he could see who else they let in, and who they still turned away. He wasn't finished. He was just making sure the story didn't repeat, at least not on his watch. It started with a sticky note, left on Reuben's desk. No name, no handwriting he recognized, just 5 words. She wasn't the only one. Attached was a flash drive. Inside, audio recordings, late-night conversations between staff at another property, jokes about guests' accents, comments about not seating the loud ones up front, mockery of disability, requests, racial shorthand. Reuben didn't flinch. He just listened and opened a new folder. The next day, an email arrived. Anonymous. I worked at Halston Grill 2 years. I saw them switch table numbers to avoid seating undesirables near the windows. I was told, quote, don't put too much color on the patio. I never said anything, but now, I'm ready. Attached, a full memo, names, dates, screenshots. Reuben flagged it. Send it straight to Cole. Start compiling. And tell legal to prep a tiered timeline. We're not putting out fires. We're burning the whole script. Word got around. Not publicly, but in kitchens, in staff rooms, in the quiet parts of the building where workers whispered truth, like secrets. They started calling it the Cross effect, the idea that if Reuben stepped in, you'd better already be clean. And if you weren't, someone was going to talk. An intern at the corporate HR office requested a meeting. When she arrived, she was shaking. But she brought a binder. Inside, unfiled complaints, misplaced reports, a full transcript of a compliance meeting that ended with, just tell them we looked into it. They'll get tired. She looked up at Reuben and said, I need to know this isn't just for PR. That someone's really watching now. Reuben didn't promise. He never did. He just handed her a card with one line. The system only protects itself until someone changes the locks. Within a month, 5 separate locations reported culture audits. 3 managers resigned preemptively. 2 more were reassigned. And yet, Reuben stayed quiet. He didn't take a podium, didn't tweet, didn't send press releases. Because he wasn't building noise. He was building new norms. At Langford, things felt different too. Naomi implemented a feedback wall, anonymous, handwritten. One card read, "I used to be afraid to serve people who looked like me. Now, I'm afraid of who I was before." Reuben saw it, left it up, right next to a new house rule. Politeness isn't enough. Respect is non-negotiable. Some people hated it, said the place felt too political now. Reuben didn't argue. He just said, the food didn't change, just the way you think you're entitled to eat it. One guest, a long-time investor, pulled him aside. "This kind of pushback, it's going to cost us something." Reuben nodded. "It already did. That's why I'm here." By the end of the quarter, Reuben received a letter, signed by 18 staff members across multiple locations. "We stayed quiet because we thought that's how the game worked. But now we see, there's a new table, and someone like us built it." He folded the letter, put it in a drawer, right next to his mother's old apron. Because silence, it wasn't the enemy. It was the thing they no longer owed anyone. It wasn't on camera. No photographers. No CEO livestream. No stage. Just a conference room, mid-morning. Long shadows, filtered light. Reuben Cross sat at the head of the table. In front of him, one document, 54 pages. Double-spaced, 12 months in the making. The Equity Accountability Protocol of Full System Reform. Not a memo. Not a mission statement. A policy. Real. Binding. Immediate. He didn't smile as he scanned the last page. Didn't pose for any handshakes. He just signed. One stroke. One name. And everything changed. Not loudly. Just permanently. The room was silent. Not tense. Not heavy. Just still. The way it feels right after something real has landed. Across the table, Naomi, now regional director, breathed out. "It's done." Reuben didn't look up. "No, it's starting." The new protocol wasn't about feelings. It was structure. Mandatory bias screenings in all hiring. Blind feedback loops for junior staff. Discrimination incidents reviewed by external rotating oversight. One line written into every new contract. Respect is not a courtesy. It's a condition of employment. Every property under RC Holdings now had to reapply for internal accreditation, and not a single location was grandfathered in. Because legacy wasn't a shield anymore. It was a test. Some properties passed. Some didn't. Reuben didn't flinch. He closed 2 locations that refused to comply. People called it extreme. "You're going to burn your own empire?" He answered, "If the foundation's cracked, the whole house falls anyway." In an internal meeting, a young HR manager asked, "How do we know this won't just be another policy that gets buried next year?" Reuben didn't blink. "Because we're not relying on memory. We're building this into the budget." Compliance wasn't optional anymore. It was funded, reported quarterly, tied to promotions, tied to whether people stayed. That same week, Reuben visited Langford. Quiet afternoon. Empty dining room between shifts. He asked for a corner booth, ordered tea, and just watched. A family walked in. Latino, 3 kids. No reservation. New hostess greeted them, smiled wide, treated them like royalty. Reuben didn't interrupt, didn't introduce himself. Because justice isn't about who sees you. It's about what doesn't happen when you're not there. Naomi slid into the booth beside him. "We're getting applications from staff at other chains. Word's out. They know we run different now." He nodded. "Good. Let them come. Let the others catch up." She paused, then asked, "Do you want a press piece? A sit-down interview?" Reuben looked out the window. If people need a headline to believe we changed, then we haven't changed enough yet. That evening he walked home. No driver. No suit. Just the same city streets that once told him to use the side door. He passed the alley behind Langford, paused, and for a second, just one, he looked at the door they made him use, then kept walking, because the point was never to go back through that door. The point was to make sure no one else ever had to. The first place to copy Langford's model wasn't even part of Reuben's holdings. It was a small wine bar in Philadelphia. Family-owned. No real press. But they rewrote their onboarding documents after reading the leaked version of Reuben's Equity Accountability Protocol. They didn't wait for permission. They just changed. One of their staff DM'd Naomi, "I never thought a restaurant could feel like a place you heal in. Now I know better." Then came the letters. A hospitality school in Chicago added a new module to its ethics course. The Cross Standard, redesigning respect as policy. Students began quoting lines from the policy document in job interviews. One wrote on her resume, "Trained in post-discrimination protocol per RC Holdings reform." It didn't land her the job, but it changed the conversation. Unions called. First hospitality, then transit, then even healthcare. They weren't asking Reuben to lead. They were asking to learn. How he structured the power map. How he enforced without spectacle. How he shifted behavior without shaming it into silence. Reuben sent them all the same thing, a plain PDF. Title: Standards over Statements. No cover letter. No watermark. Just content. If it helps you clean your house, use it. Meanwhile, the media started noticing, not because Reuben reached out, but because his absence became its own kind of story. No press tour. No op-eds. No profile pieces. Still, outlets ran headlines. The quiet man behind the loudest policy shift in hospitality. Why restaurants are whispering the name Reuben Cross. What happens when justice isn't for sale but standard? Reuben refused interviews. Every time. He had a rule. If they want a face, they're not ready for the structure. Inside Langford, something subtler happened. New hires started asking better questions. How are guests treated when they don't tip big? What's your policy when a manager makes a biased joke? If I speak up, will I still have hours next week? Naomi didn't flinch, because the culture didn't just change at the top. It seeped through the grout. The biggest moment came at the annual Hospitality Equity Conference. Reuben was nominated for Industry Reformer of the Year. He declined, didn't show up, but when the presenter stood at the podium, she held up Reuben's policy packet and said, "The only reason this award matters is because someone who didn't want it showed us how not to need it." The room stood, not for applause, but because sitting felt like going backwards. At home, Reuben didn't follow any of it. He still walked, still drank black coffee, still answered emails with one-sentence replies. He kept a folder on his desk labeled, "Next." Inside, memos about housing equity, proposals for inclusive design standards, notes on a youth training initiative built around service with dignity. Because restaurants weren't the end game, they were just the first building. One evening, Naomi visited, brought tea and 3 letters from staff he'd never met. One was from a dishwasher in Dallas. "I used to hide my stutter. Now, my manager makes sure I can still lead the safety talk, even if it takes longer." Another from a former felon working at a new cross-standard kitchen. "No one looked at me like I was borrowed time. They trained me like I'd own something one day." The third, from a 14-year-old student who'd never even worked a shift. "My mom said your restaurant was the first place she didn't feel watched. I want to build a place like that, too." Reuben didn't cry, but he closed his eyes. Let the words sit in the room a while, because impact isn't always visible. But sometimes it arrives folded in paper, carried in silence, and left at your door with no return address. And when it does, you don't need to respond. You just keep building. It was late. The city moved slow, and Reuben had just finished reviewing drafts for a new equity clause in lease agreements. He was stacking papers when his assistant buzzed in. "There's someone here. Says she worked for Midtown. Melissa Lang." That name sat still in the room. Melissa, the former general manager of Langford, the one who had once let politeness mask the problem. Reuben exhaled. "Send her in." She walked in carefully. No blazer. No clipboard. Not stiff, just unsure. In her hands, a thin envelope. Not sealed. Reuben gestured to the chair. She sat, placed the envelope on the table between them. Didn't push it forward. Didn't say anything yet. Then, I never said thank you. Not for what you did. For what you didn't do. He tilted his head. She continued. You didn't humiliate me. You didn't use me as an example. But you also didn't let me stay comfortable. You let the truth do the work. And I wasn't ready for it. But now, I'm trying to be. She slid the envelope forward. Inside, a letter. Simple. Typed. It read, I was the gate, not the guardian. I thought neutrality made me safe. But it just made me silent. I see what I let happen. And I see the room differently now. Thank you for not locking the door, just turning the light on. Reuben folded the letter. Set it down. You're not the only one who stayed quiet, Melissa. You're just one of the few who came back. She nodded. I'm working in policy now, not just compliance. And I cite you more than I care to admit. He raised an eyebrow. You cite me? She smiled. The man who walked through the back. So we'd stop forgetting who built the front? Yeah, a few times. She didn't stay long. Just long enough to say, I should have known who you were. But more than that, I should have treated you like someone, even if you weren't. She stood, paused at the door. You changed my career. But more than that, you changed my conscience. Then she left. And Reuben? He didn't need closure. But he appreciated clarity. 2 days later, another reckoning arrived. Not in person. Just a voicemail. Tyler Hayes, former bar manager. The one who said, you don't dress like a VIP. His voice was worn, less arrogant. Mr. Cross, I don't expect a call back. I just wanted to say, I've been watching what's happened since. And I get now. It wasn't about me losing my job. It was about me thinking I ever had the right to decide who deserved a seat. I'm working now, smaller bar, different crowd, and I shut that talk down the second I hear it. Because once you've been on the wrong end of the mirror, you don't forget what it showed you. Thank you. I was ugly in that moment, but you didn't make a show of it. You made a standard. Reuben saved the message. Didn't reply. Didn't delete it either. Because some reckonings? You don't have to finish. You just have to hear. Later that week, Reuben visited the old property where his mother used to clean hotel floors. It had been converted into apartments, but the foundation was still the same. He walked the lobby, watched people check in without stares, saw a staff member stop to help an elderly man with his coat. No size, no rush. He stood by the old freight elevator, eyes closed, and whispered, "She like this." Then walked out. No speech, no plaque, just presence. Because sometimes reckoning doesn't come with a microphone. It comes when people finally say what they couldn't before. And when silence is replaced by something better, an honest voice, and the space to be heard. The building looked smaller than he remembered. Not in size, in stature. The paint was new. The signage changed. But the bones were still the same. Reuben Cross stood on the sidewalk outside what used to be the Langford Midtown. Now it was called Harbor and Vine. New ownership, new chef, new concept. But Reuben wasn't here for the menu. He was here for the hallway. He stepped inside. No fanfare. No one recognized him. Which was fine. He wasn't here to be seen. He passed the bar, once Tyler's domain. It was quieter now. More balanced. A server glanced his way and smiled. "Evening, sir. Just you tonight?" He nodded. "Not staying. Just stopping by." She gave a small nod of understanding. The kind you give a man who walks with purpose. He walked past the lobby, to a hallway now lined with plants and light fixtures. But Reuben remembered it differently. Dim, sterile. The place they sent him when they thought he didn't belong. He stopped at a narrow wooden door, once unmarked, now used for coat check. Back then, it was the service entrance. He reached into his coat, pulled out a single key, not to unlock anything, just to return it. He placed it gently on the shelf inside the doorway. No note, no label, just this, a man who no longer needed access, because he'd outgrown the place that once tried to contain him. On his way out, he passed by the front desk. The new maitre d' smiled warmly. "Leaving already, sir?" Reuben nodded. "I've seen everything I needed to." She tilted her head. "Have you been here before?" He smiled, in more ways than you'd guess, then turned and walked out the front door. For the last time. That night, back home, Reuben opened his sketch journal. He didn't draw. He just wrote one line across the page. Some places don't get to keep you, but they don't get to erase you either. He tore the page out, taped it inside the back of his mother's old apron, the one with the faded tag, the bleach stains, the memories, then folded it, carefully, placed it back in the drawer, closed it, not to forget, but to protect it. Weeks later, Naomi hosted a new manager orientation at a sister location. She opened the session with a quote Reuben had once said quietly without realizing it stuck. "You don't lead by being visible. You lead by what remains when you leave." They wrote it down, typed it into slide decks, printed it on the back of their ID cards. But Reuben never asked for that. He just kept showing up in places where silence used to win and leaving behind the sound of something stronger. Presence. And that stayed, even after the names changed, even after the buildings did, even after Reuben stepped away. What stayed was the proof, not of who he was, but of what he wouldn't let disappear. They tried to erase the presence. Instead, it became the proof that wouldn't go away.